Today we're doing something different. Should be good fun. We're here at Lithgow, the home of the Australian Lee Enfield made rifles. We've got something you don't see every day. 4 HT sniper rifles and a strange little beastie up the top there, a number 6. Some of you might be looking at the top rifle and think it's actually a number 5, but it isn't. Starting with the receiver of the number 6. During the Second World War there was a demand for a lightened rifle that would be useful for close combat, like in the jungle I suppose you could say. And so various trials were carried out in Australia and in England and in India, as well as Canada I believe. And the Australian result of these trials was the number 6 rifle, on basically a number 1 action. There were 4 different subgroups I suppose you could say of these rifles, and I'll just have a bit of a look towards the front. Has a shortened barrel with a flash hider or a flash eliminator or whatever you want to call it. Less timber, makes it lighter. Has grooves in the wood, making it easier to hold. And this particular rifle, which is one of the 3rd type, has a standard butt with a brass butt plate. So just having a bit of a closer look down the rifle. Very rare beastie these. Of the 4 subtypes that were built, I believe 50 of each type were done. So the first subtype had a rear sight on the barrel, pretty much in a similar position to the standard number 1s. And it also had a standard butt with a brass butt plate. The second 50 had a rubber pad on the butt plate, pretty much like a number 5, also with the barrel mounted rear sight. The 3rd type had a receiver mounted rear sight and a standard brass butt plate, and the 4th type had the rubber pad and the receiver mounted rear sight you see here. Anyone familiar with the number 4 and number 5 rifles will be aware of the flip type micrometer rear sights, and this number 6 rifle has a very similar rear sight. It's graduated out to 800 yards, it's Savage made, and it makes an interesting sight on a number 1 action. So that's the number 6. 1-1 I suppose you'd say. And now we move down to the other 4 rifles, the Lithgow HT sniper rifles. I'll get back and get a bit of a closer sight. When the Second World War started, Australia didn't have too many sniper rifles, and the ones they had were built on the P14 using a 1918 pattern scope. It was obvious as the war went on that we needed an Australian built rifle because the ones we had weren't going to last forever, they were getting worn out. And so in 1944 the design was made, which combined an Australian, or in some cases English, number 1 Mark III using the 1918 pattern scope, because that was the only one that we had the plans and the information to build here in Australia. 2,500 of these rifles were ordered, but only about 1,600 of them were eventually built. They started with the high type mount. I'll show you that in a bit closer detail. On these 2 rifles, both built on 1916 Lithgow actions, you see the top rifle has a low mount and the bottom rifle has a high mount. So it's plain to see the difference in the height. They started off with the high mount, and then after about 1,100 rifles, I think, my maths isn't real good, they went to the low mount, which gave, I suppose it was easier to see, well, it was just something that they did. And anyway, so about 400 odd of the low mounts were made. So you can see the difference in the height. And I've already shown you in detail my own HT sniper rifle, so I'm not going to go into huge detail here. Suffice to say that these are all beautiful rifles. So these 2, 1916 Lithgow actions, 1944 converted. And these 2, the bottom one of which is mine. The top one is a 1916 English BSA action with a low mount, and the bottom one is a 1917 Lithgow action with a high mount. And so you just see the variations. And here's the good old Vegemite. What would one of my videos be these days without Vegemite? So there we go. We're actually filming this today at the rifle range at Lithgow, just next to the factory, which has been here for a while and has seen probably about a squillion rounds of 303 disappearing down range. So occasionally you might hear a crack in the background. So here we go, folks, a bit of Australian ingenuity. Had to drop the folks in there somewhere. A bit of Australian ingenuity in putting in what was an obsolete but the only available scope onto a readily available rifle to fulfill a need, a desperate need I suppose you might say, during wartime, because that's the best that they had. And the top rifle, the number 6, being a good example of what could be done to make the number 1 rifle more practical for close combat. So folks, I hope you enjoyed that, and I thank the gentlemen who brought their rifles along to play. Sadly I won't be taking these other 4 home with me, but I could try, but I know I'd probably get about 10 feet. So if you've got any more requests or anything, post a comment and we'll see what we can do. See ya!